The rain fell softly against the cafe window, blurring the world outside into strokes of gray and silver. Inside, the aroma of roasted coffee beans wrapped around her like a fragile comfort. Mia stirred her cappuccino absent-mindedly, tracing circles in the foam, her heart pounding in quiet anxiety. Across from her, Daniel watched her with calm eyes that seemed to see far more than she dared show. It had been 3 years since she'd lost Aaron. 3 years since the hospital corridor echoed with the sound of machines flatlining and her world collapsed in silence. Everyone had told her time would heal, but time, she found, only made the ache quieter, not smaller. She had learned to smile again, to function, to laugh at her sister's jokes, but she hadn't learned how to start again. Until Daniel. He wasn't someone she had expected to meet. She'd joined a community art class to keep her weekends from feeling endless, and he had walked in one rainy afternoon. Messy hair, paint-streaked fingers, and a smile that disarmed her in ways she couldn't understand. He was younger by a few years, full of life, light, and that strange confidence that comes from a heart unscarred. Now, 2 months later, here they were, two people sitting across from each other, hearts trembling in the quiet storm between them. "You don't mind that I'm a widow?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel smiled. It wasn't a polite smile or a forced one, it was warm, steady, and impossibly sincere. "I see a woman," he said softly. "Not a title." For a moment, Mia couldn't speak. Her eyes burned, but she blinked the tears away quickly. She had been prepared for pity, awkwardness, maybe even hesitation, but not this gentle acceptance. Not this kind of grace. Their friendship deepened in quiet, steady ways. Daniel had a way of bringing color back into her gray world. He'd drag her out for evening walks, stop to photograph sunsets, or invite her to paint even when she protested she was terrible at it. He'd grin and hand her a brush anyway. "Then let's make terrible art together," he'd say. He never asked too many questions, never pushed her to talk about Aaron. But when she did, on the nights when memories rose like waves and she couldn't hold them back, he listened. No judgment, no impatience, just presence. It scared her sometimes, how easily he fit into the spaces she thought were sealed forever. But guilt followed closely behind warmth. Every time she caught herself laughing too easily, smiling too long, she felt a pang of betrayal. Aaron had been her first love, her husband, her future. How dare she feel alive again? One evening, as they cleaned up their paint-streaked table, she caught herself staring at Daniel, his messy curls falling into his eyes, his shirt covered in streaks of blue and yellow. He looked up, grinned, and smudged a streak of paint across her cheek. "Perfect," he said. "Now you match the sky." Her laughter bubbled out before she could stop it. And just like that, she froze. The sound had felt too free. Too happy. The guilt hit her chest like a stone. Daniel noticed immediately. His smile softened. "Hey," he said quietly. "It's okay to laugh, Mia." Her hands trembled. "Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying him," she whispered. "You're not," Daniel said. "You're honoring what he gave you, by still being here. Still feeling. Still living." His words stayed with her long after he left that night. But not everyone saw it that way. When Mia's sister, Claire, found out she was spending so much time with Daniel, her concern came cloaked in caution. "Mia," Claire said gently one afternoon, "I just don't want you to get hurt. He's young, he's idealistic. He doesn't know what it means to love someone who's lost." Mia sighed. "You think I don't know that? I think you're trying to move on too quickly," Claire said. "You were married. You lost him. That kind of love doesn't just end." Mia looked out the window, her reflection merging with the rain. "It didn't end," she murmured. "It just changed." But the doubts took root anyway. They always did. That weekend, she canceled her plans with Daniel. Then she ignored his messages. For days, she busied herself with errands, laundry, anything that kept her from thinking. But silence, she realized, had a way of amplifying the heart's truth. She missed him, not as a distraction, but as someone who reminded her what warmth felt like. Still, fear kept her from reaching out. One evening, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Daniel standing there, drenched from the rain, a soaked canvas under his arm. "I made something," he said, almost shyly. "But I wasn't sure if I should show you." Before she could answer, he held it up. It was a painting, abstract, swirling with stormy blues and soft golds. At the center, two figures, one shadowed in gray, one in light, reaching for each other across the canvas. The hands didn't quite touch, but the connection was undeniable. "It's us," he said simply. "Not perfect, not easy, but trying." Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't know if it was the rain, the painting, or the quiet devotion in his voice, but something broke open inside her. "Why do you keep showing up?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You could have someone whole. Someone without this history." Daniel stepped closer. "Because I don't see broken pieces," he said. "I see strength. I see a woman who loved deeply and still chooses to love again, even when it scares her." He paused, his voice softening. "You think grief makes you hard to love, Mia. But it's what makes you real." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time, she didn't feel ashamed of the ache she carried. She realized that loving again didn't mean erasing what came before, it meant expanding her heart to hold both past and present. They began to build something fragile but beautiful. It wasn't easy. There were days she pulled away, overwhelmed by guilt. Days when Daniel's patience thinned under the weight of her silence. Once, after a particularly painful argument, when she accused him of deserving someone simpler, he walked away, eyes dark with hurt. For weeks, they didn't speak. The world felt colder again. She threw herself into work, into family gatherings, pretending she was fine. But one evening, while packing away old photo albums, she found one of her and Aaron. The photo showed them laughing, wind in their hair, sunlight in their eyes. She smiled, then whispered, "Thank you." And in that whisper came a strange peace. She realized that grief hadn't chained her, it had taught her how to love deeper, wider. Aaron's memory wasn't a wall. It was a bridge. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. When he answered, there was hesitation in his voice. "Mia, can we talk?" she asked. "Please." They met at the same cafe where it all began. The same window. The same rain. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as she saw him. "I kept running from what I feel because I thought loving you meant losing him again. But I was wrong." He looked at her quietly, waiting. "I'll always carry him with me," she continued. "But I want to make space for something new. If you still want this, if you still want me." Daniel's eyes softened, and that same gentle smile, the one that had first melted her defenses, appeared again. "I never stopped," he said. "You're not a title, Mia. You're a story still being written." Months passed, and their love grew in small, unassuming ways, late-night laughter, shared art projects, quiet mornings with coffee and unspoken understanding. He never tried to replace what she had lost, he simply added to what she still carried. At their first art exhibition together, one painting drew everyone's attention, a piece called "The Second Sunrise." It showed two figures standing side by side, watching the dawn. One figure's shadow stretched long, as though someone unseen still stood behind her, watching too. A woman approached Mia after the show, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful," she said. "I lost my husband last year. I didn't think I could ever feel light again." Mia smiled gently. "The light doesn't replace the dark," she said. "It just teaches you how to live with both." Years later, standing in her garden as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia felt Daniel's arms wrap around her from behind. She leaned into him, her heart steady. "Do you ever think about him?" Daniel asked softly. "Every day," she said. "But now, it doesn't hurt. It just reminds me how much I was lucky to love twice." Daniel kissed her temple. "Then we'll keep loving, for all three of us." She turned to him, smiling. "You don't mind that I'm a widow?" He smiled that same timeless smile. "I see a woman," he said again, "not a title." And for the first time in years, she felt entirely whole. Moral: love is not limited by loss. The heart doesn't replace, it expands. To love again after grief is not betrayal, it is the purest form of courage. Because sometimes, the greatest honor we can give to the past is to live fully in the present.